It's up in 30 seconds, probably. Okay, welcome to 1000 Ways, the show inspired by Rumi's quote that there are 1,000 ways to kiss the earth. Today, I have my guest is Don Realini. Don is a police officer with the Lethbridge City Police, and I've known him for many years with a sport that we enjoy together, mostly, right, Don? Welcome, Don.
That's right. Thank you.
Do you recall, Don, how we first met?
Oh gosh, that was about 100 years ago, and at the range, probably I think on a league night for the Chinook Country Shooters Association.
Even before that, you wanted to learn a little bit about PPC. You were unfamiliar with PPC, and then you and I kind of had a little. We got together and kind of I told you what I knew about PPC. But what I thought was interesting about that, do you remember? I asked you the question at that time. Why law enforcement, Don? Do you remember what you told me?
I'm a little nervous now, but I try to remember. I don't actually.
That's okay. What you said was, "Hey, I want my efforts to go directly to people that I serve. I'm not interested in making money for some big corporation. I want my efforts to go to the people that I'm serving." The
GPS
people.
signal lost.
Thank you, Google.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah,
anyways,
if I had 25, 30 years of labor to contribute, I just wanted to invest that in my community, and rather than making another corporation that much more wealthier, or investing in something that I saw more impact in.
Yes. Well, it was, I thought, a very surprisingly mature and thought through answer for somebody of your age when you started. You were quite a young man. So when you started with the police force here. So, well, not that you're old, Don. I'm not saying you're old now.
Oh no, I feel old.
So, Don, I'm kind of on a mission. I want to reduce adverse childhood experiences, and the thought process is real simple. If we can reduce trauma that young kids experience, they're going to have better lives, or if we can help them deal with trauma they've experienced, and further to that, they're going to have better lives as an adult, and we're going to have a better community with people who are better able to enjoy life, happy contributors to their families and our community. So that's kind of the mission I'm working on. In your role, you see kids that are experiencing trauma or have experienced trauma. This is a regular occurrence for you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what is the process? First of all, for those that don't know, how would you identify a little person that you knew was in some distress from things happening in their lives?
Well, usually when we get called, it's probably some of the worst times of their lives, and it doesn't take much investigative skills. They could be injured, they could be crying, the household is in disarray. It could be a domestic, it could be assisting child and family services. So the scenes are usually pretty significant, and there's no question as to what's going on in terms of a child being in trouble or being exposed to trauma or in some sort of crisis.
Right. That's pretty straightforward. Yeah. How about though in the school setting? So you haven't been called for a domestic in a home, but in the school setting, you like normally, not now. Normally though, you would be touring around schools and being in classrooms and seeing kids in the hallways, that kind of a thing. And I'm sure that's a very eye-opening experience for you as well. Would that be accurate?
It is. It's a little more subtle in the school environment, as my role as a school resource officer. But we can be exposed in a number of ways. It's most schools have a counselor or wellness team, and we have regular discussions with them through the teachers, noticing some behavioral changes, or admin staff, or there's an incident at the school, and we're responding in that sort of investigative capacity, or dealing with an assault or custody issues, or maybe there was a discovery of an incident at home and abuse at home, or a child was injured or something of this nature. And usually it's not quite so time sensitive as when it's on patrols, but and then sometimes we've had the rare occasion where children will come up to us and talk quite freely and candidly with us.
Yeah, that takes certainly a lot of courage for them to come up to you and tell you, things that are happening in their lives that are hurtful to them. Hey, that's a pretty courageous act for a little person to do that, eh?
For sure, it's not an easy thing to do, I would imagine. A big part of that is laying the foundation, the groundwork, and being in the schools and establishing those connections and rapport building, and just having a police officer being present in the school, and that when children see a police officer, they don't automatically assume there's a lockdown drill or something bad has happened. And it's just part of the landscape, another part of the admin team, and engaging kids and creating an environment where kids are willing to come up and talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're a very approachable kind of a guy. Being a dad and all, this is easy for you, walking around and talking to the little people in the schools. What ages are the students that you interact with in schools?
They're everywhere from kindergarten right up to high school, grade 12. Right now, because of the COVID restrictions, and it's up to grade 6. I've been zooming in with some classes, and I certainly have a whole new appreciation and understanding how difficult it is for teachers to teach staring at the little green dot like I am tonight, and not having those nonverbal cues that we rely so heavily on when teaching or dealing with children.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know who Dr. Bruce Perry is? Have you ever heard of this guy?
Name doesn't sound familiar.
I'm a big fan of this guy. So Dr. Bruce Perry, he's wrote the book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. And he's a child development expert. And he's been called in on all kinds of horrendous type situations involving children. Waco was one of the ones that he was called in. But the actual title story of the book was A Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. This young woman had a child. She couldn't take care of the child, gives it to grandma to take care of. Grandma's like 68-year diabetic who's obese, and she dies like within about 6 months. So grandma's gone, and the boyfriend has this boy, and he doesn't know nothing about kids. So he puts him in the cage with the other dogs and feeds him like a dog. And that's the whole kind of a thing. So by the time that Bruce Perry gets involved, this child has been like living as a dog for like 3 years, I believe it was. And so then he kind of goes through these, a neurosequential process to say at what point was this boy's development stopped? How do we recover that, restore that brain functioning as best as we can, kind of a thing. And a lot of what he does, so it's amazing the transformations that somebody who knows what they're doing, who can identify where the child experienced this trauma, and then go through and help them get the corrective measures so that they can have a good life yet. I mean, that's an incredible story, this guy. So he's, I'm a big fan. Why was I telling you this? Oh, I know why I was telling you this. Because
I knew they were going somewhere.
Sorry about that, Don. There was a point to that. My point was this. When we're talking about with kids, he says, if you have kids that are in a elevated state, right, they are basically functioning at their brainstem. And so there's like the brainstem, the diencephalon, the limbic, and the the neocortex, right? Those kind of are the 4 parts of the brain, the big chunks. And he says that if you have a child who's in trauma, then they're going to basically be in their brainstem. In their brainstem, they can only function at about half of their intellectual capacity. So if that, I don't know when they measure IQs, and I don't even know what my IQ. Do you know what your IQ is?
Not a clue.
Me neither. But anyways, his point is, if it's 100, and I don't know if it's 100 is good or bad, but if the person's potential IQ is 100, if they are in an elevated state, like a child would be who's suffering trauma, they can only function at like about half of that, like of 50, right? That kind of a thing. And so the whole, just the fact of learning becomes that much more challenging for little people who are under stress because of things that got happening in their life, right? Another thing he says is about the importance of relationships with a caring adult. So your role in the school and having, little Sally or little Timmy come up and feel comfortable talking to a police officer, and a police officer, no matter what you do for them, just listening to them is a huge thing for them, for children, in terms of minimizing that trauma and helping them to heal as well, right? It's just the connections are a very important aspect, is the way he says. Basically, it's a lack of connection, lack of relationships that way, that allows a lot of damage to go unchecked, if you will, and not get resolved. So Don, talk me through kind of the process when you started off talking about where you went to a home. It was a domestic violence type situation. In those kind of situations, if the child is deemed to be at risk, then what is the process? What happens after that? And I don't think this is sharing any secrets or anything. There is a process you follow in those kind of situations, right?
Oh, for sure. And it depends on the severity of the incident. Sort of the standard that police and child and family services are the parents able to provide the necessities of life, food, shelter, what are the threat assessments or risk to the child? Is this something we can follow up on regular business hours with assistance to child and family services, or this is something that we have to call the on-call worker? Is this something we have to remove the child immediately? Or can this be done through follow-up and interviews? And really, it has a lot to do with the interactions with the parents, what's going on in the home, what are the hazards, are there drugs involved, are there people making, are they under the influence of alcohol, how stable is the home? And so all those factors greatly depend on how we proceed. Anytime we sit down and talk to children or adults even, you always get the best information when people are relaxed and able to talk to you, and not everybody's wound up and able to communicate. And if people aren't responding, it makes it really difficult.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sure it does. Yeah, I'm sure that's a tough go. So, and any threats involving children, or potential threat for a child in their environment that they're in, then that triggers who from the child protection. What was child protection here called? Like, I was just reading Bruce Perry's book, and his CPS, Child Protection Services, but it's probably not called that here. What's it called?
Yeah, it's probably an American term, I'm guessing. It's Southwest Child and Family Services. Their names change from time to time. We generally kind of refer to them as Child and Family Services. And they have on-call workers. They have members trained in interviewing with children. And children are really susceptible to suggestions or trying to please parents or their adults of what answers you want. And so it's very important when speaking or interviewing children that we don't ask questions in such a way to give away the answer that they think we want to hear.
Right.
And because they have a high desire just to please the adults, whether it be the parents, the teachers, social workers, police. And so they have a high desire to answer you in a way that pleases you or what they think you would like to hear. So it's you have to be a much more patient and slow the process down and when speaking with children.
Yeah, no, it makes real good sense. Well, with the victim services unit that I am volunteer with, we have a service dog, right? And the service dog often goes and then, so the dog can be with the child if the child has to give testimony, right? And that's a huge, huge benefit for that child to relax and be able to kind of deal with reliving that, the experience that they're relating to the court, right? So, yeah. There's something else I was going to mention about that. Oh, yes. You were saying about where, when everybody's elevated, having a meaningful conversation is so difficult, right? Like, of course, right? And that's the same thing that Bruce Perry talks about with the whole brainstem thing. If you're in your brainstem, flight or fright, or that kind of a situation, well, you're not going to be able to communicate very effectively and keep your emotions in check as well. And they have this process, and he's got another doctor, Dr. Roger Ablon, that he works with. And they're very much in terms of you have to regulate yourself, then you can then you can help the child to regulate, and then you can have a conversation kind of a thing. So Don, I'm trying to, and you might have some insights for me here. I'm trying to find a way that just caring adults in our community can assist children who are experiencing trauma or have experienced trauma, and assist them in their recovery. And my thought process is we probably have like thousands of caring adults who could pass all the police security checks and everything. We knew that they wouldn't be a threat to a child, and with some training that they might be able to intervene in a child's life in a meaningful way to help them, even if it's just to listen, but something like that. Do you see, in your mind, is there any role that just a caring civilian could assist with in that situation?
For sure. Kids have a strong desire to connect with people, connectivity, to feel they belong to something. And so, there's many formal and informal ways. When I think of my own childhood growing up, I didn't realize that at the time, but your baseball coaches, your hockey coaches, those volunteers that year after year, and probably didn't get thanked anywhere near enough, and offering someone to talk to, introducing, sports ethics, code of conduct, rules, fair play, and that's a great learning tool as well. And I've never had any involvement with Big Brothers or Sisters, but those are more formal organizations. But kids need to have their cup filled with meaningful inputs and mentorships, and if they don't, they will seek that out on their own, and where that source is, it could be scary. You don't know, you're rolling the dice, especially now in the age of the internet. There's groups out there looking to find impressionable minds to fill them with ideas and to engage them, and if we're not engaging our children, our youth, someone else will be. So we at times, I know we're tired as parents and as teachers. I've seen and get fatigued, but it's an important role.
Yeah, I agree entirely. When you're talking about sports, I got to tell you my Maurice Lanoux story now. Are you ready, Don?
Yes, go for it.
All right. when I was a young man, I played hockey, and I was not particularly talented by any means, but I liked to play.
We
And
might have been on the same team then.
what's that?
Said we might have been on the same team then.
Maybe, yes. So I had a coach, just a local volunteer guy. His name was Morris Lanou, and he drove school bus, and he delivered water, and he had a dairy farm, and he coached kids in playing hockey. And so I don't know why I thought of this, but probably 15, 20 years ago, I wrote him a letter. I said, "Hey, Mr. Lanou, you might not remember me. My name's Alan Friesen. I was one of the kids you coached hockey. Obviously, I didn't make it to the NHL or anything, but I did want to thank you for teaching me about how do you win gracefully and lose. What do you how do you work with when days you win and days you lose? How do you work together as a team? How do you rely on each other? You've taught me a lot of things, and I thank you very much for that." And I grew up in just outside of Winnipeg, a little town called Headingley. So when I went to Headingley, and next time I went to go visit him, I didn't connect with him then. And then about 5 years after that, his son called me, and his son said, "Hey, I'm Morris Lanou's son, and my dad died." And I said, "Oh, that's sorry to hear that." Said, and in his special oak cabinet thing where he keeps,
Jesse, because I just turned my phone on, but I'm trying to listen to this, and the sound is really bad.
Is it?
Yeah.
I just
This
lost.
is what it sounds like.
Oh my.
So that's what he probably was calling me about. He have no sound. Are you close to Alan? He has no sound.
Ah, shit.
I called him.
And
I texted him.
Dawn just dropped out of the call.
Well, it wasn't.
No loss there.
I just thought, oh, I wanted to listen to your thing.
Yeah.
And then went on, and then it wasn't working. And then I noticed it showed after I logged on that I'd missed a call from Jesse. And then I thought, oh, he's probably calling because the sound.
Yeah, my phone kept on trying to tell me stuff, so I shut it off.
Oh, yeah. Well, my phone was dead, so I just turned it on. Right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd have been able to tell you earlier.
Okay, I should end broadcast.